everyone, and welcome to week 4. This week, we're talking about client-centered counseling for behavior change. Some of this week's objectives include identifying the stages of change, providing examples on how to roll with resistance, provide an in-depth description of motivational interviewing, and I just want to note that motivational interviewing is really at the core of the community health worker's job. And so you'll see this come up over and over again throughout the rest of the semester because it's a skill you will need to practice and master. Examine the key components of motivational interviewing, and finally, you will start practicing your motivational interviewing skills using simulations. So as such, the items that are due this week is you will have a motivational interview spirit quiz. It's a true or false quiz or an either or quiz, so you only have one attempt to take it. And as I said, you're going to start practicing with your simulations. So make sure you're watching the video in Blackboard on how to access your account for the simulations. And we'll talk more about this in just a minute. And then, of course, you have your discussion board and your reflection journal. And so these simulations are conducted through the Simmersion website. You should already have access to your subscription for it. And as I said, this is going to take some practice and it's going to take some work. So what I have done is separate these two simulations throughout the semester. So for this week, your job is to practice the simulation until you're able to get a score of at least 35%. This may take a few times, so be patient and try to space it out so you're not working on this Sunday night and trying to achieve that 35%. The next is also a simulation that's titled Talking to Patients About Health Risks. Again, your goal this week is to achieve at least a score of 35%. Again, I'm going to encourage you to start early in the week so you have plenty of time to practice. I just want to quickly go over the stages of change. So as you recall from class, we spoke about these items in terms of the stages of change people go through when deciding to change a particular behavior. And they include pre-contemplation. And this is I'm not even thinking about making any type of change. Contemplation is I'm thinking about making a change. Not quite ready to do it, but at least I'm thinking about it. Preparation is I'm beginning to make some plans to change. I haven't done it yet, but I'm making a plan to do it. In action, I'm starting to make the changes. I've actively made changes for my plan. Maintenance is now that I've made this change, I'm committed to being changed in the long run. And relapse. This is when I go back to my previous behavior, and we'll talk more about this in a minute. And then if you relapse, then you return to the pre-contemplation stage. A little more about relapse. I think people tend to think of relapse as failing, and that's not the case at all. Relapse just means returning to a prior behavior or condition. It's not a failure. It means that treatment is not working and you need to modify treatment. Let's take this from a health example. Let's say I have hypertension or high blood pressure and I've been taking my medication for a few years now. And I go to the doctor and they take my blood pressure and all of a sudden it's really high. This would be considered a relapse. Does it mean I failed? No. It means my pills aren't working anymore and we need to adjust the treatment. Just like with a health condition, relapse means you have to adjust the treatment that's not working anymore. And so one of the areas that you will be working with your clients is an area called relapse prevention. And it's okay to plan for relapse, right? It occurs a lot. So it's working with clients to identify ways to help reduce the chance of getting relapse. So questions you could ask are, what would you like to do if you were to relapse? So what would you do if you were to relapse? Let's not say I'm a failure, this sucks, I give up, but let's make a plan if it happens. What will I do? Or, you can ask questions, how would you like to handle this? So again, addressing relapse when talking to your clients when creating an action plan is very important because more likely than not, it's going to happen. And we need to change the way we speak to ourselves when it happens, so that we don't just give up and say, okay, I give up, it didn't work, that we think about what relapse means, that treatment is not working, and make a plan for that. So here's more review about motivational interviewing. And again, I can't stress how important this skill is. So again, it's a client-centered method of communicating to strengthen their motivation for change. And the primary goals of motivational interviewing include minimal resistance, elicit change talk with your clients, exploring and resolving ambivalence, nurture hope and confidence. And there's this paradox of change, is that when a person feels accepted for who they are and where they are at this moment, no matter how unhealthy they are, it allows them the freedom to consider change rather than needing to defend against it. So for example, let's say I smoke and my counselor is telling me all the negatives about smoking. So the whole session is going to focus her telling me about the negatives and me making excuses or defending my position for smoking. Instead, don't tell your client what to do. They know what they need to do. You're going to encourage conversation and encourage ways for them to feel good about themselves so that they feel in a secure spot in life to make change. As we know, change is very difficult. Again, what not to do. Do not judge. Do not give advice. Do not tell your client what to do. I don't know about you, but I hate when people tell me what to do. And do not force them to talk to you about it. If they're not ready or willing to talk about it, move on to something else. So there are a few principles for motivational interviewing. R, and it stands for rule. R is resist the righting reflex. You are not always right. Don't tell your client they're wrong and how to do it right. So resist it. U is understand your client's motivation. Where are they in terms of their motivation? And what are their motivations for continuing the behavior? Why do I smoke? L, listen to your client. And listening is more than just hearing. It's reflecting back what they're saying to them. And then E is empower your client. Help them feel good about where they are right now so they feel comfortable with talking to you about making change. And so we look at how to create a motivational interviewing conversation. And there are basically 3 steps. Develop collaboration, be sensitive, and display empathy. In developing collaboration, you're really going to make this feel like a team effort. And so one way to do that is to use terms like we or let's. Don't use terms like you or you should, right? Make this a collaborative effort. Make you involved in it. For being sensitive, be sensitive when you talk to clients and support their autonomy or independence, as well as help them feel valued in the conversation. The more comfortable your client feels and the more respected your client feels, the more likely they are going to be comfortable sharing information with you. Display empathy. And so empathy is taking an active interest and trying to understand your client's point of view and how they're feeling in this moment or how an event or condition make them feel. And one way to show empathy is by rephrasing what you think they feel, by trying to restate what they're saying. So you're showing that you're really making an effort and trying to understand where they are coming from. You can also express empathy by using affirmations throughout the confirmation. And these are used to reinforce strengths or reframe your client's actions in a positive way or convey appreciation. Thank you for sharing with me. I know that must have been hard. And so the MI process involves engaging. So this is engaging your client so they feel comfortable to talk freely with you. You're going to address the goals of the client, address any questions or concerns they may have, and address expectations. What do they expect from these sessions? Focusing is thinking about the ongoing process of seeking and maintaining direction in your conversation. It's not just having a conversation with your friends where the topic can go anywhere. Your goal is to take what they're saying and focus it in. so that these conversations seem meaningful and purposeful. Evoking is the process of helping patients or clients understand their behaviors and identify their own reasons for change. Again, it's not you telling the client why they need to change and what are the benefits of changing. It's the client coming up with reasons why to change and what are the potential benefits. And then last is planning. So planning the transition from discussing to action and making a plan for that action. One of the techniques for motivational interviewing is using OARS. OARS stands for open-ended questions, affirmations, and reflections, and summaries. Open-ended questions typically start with who, what, where, when, and why. They're questions that evoke a long response or a more detailed response. They are not questions that allow a client to answer yes or no, because you're not going to get a lot of information from that. Affirmations are statements that encourage the positive things your client is doing. So let's take my smoking example. So let's say I came in and said, oh, instead of smoking 3 packs of cigarettes this week, I only smoked 2. That's great. That's a wonderful thing you did. How were you able to achieve it? Many people couldn't do that. You were able to do that. So let's talk about the ways you did that, right? Affirm, make positive things, make positive connections that your client is doing. And then reflection, just restate your client's thoughts and ideas to allow you to confirm that you understand what your client is saying. And you can also add meaning or emphasis to a simple reflection and see if you are understanding or getting it. Because if you're not, your client will tell you, no, that's not what I mean. What I meant is da 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 da. And then summary should be towards the end of your session where you kind of recap what you went over with your clients. Another technique of motivational interviewing, and possibly one of my favorites, is this using rulers. Rulers can be used quickly to assess a patient's motivation and a change talk. And there are 3 ways you can use this, probably even more. 3 ways I'm going to highlight is your readiness to change. So how ready do you feel right now in your attempt to quit smoking on a scale of 1 to 10? 10, you are ready to change right now, 1, not at all. And let's say they say, well, I'm a 6. And you can say, great, that's great, you're a 6. So why did you say 6 rather than a 5? And then there you would answer. And then go back and say, well, why did you say a 6 rather than a 7? And it's going to give you some valuable information on where they are right now. So you can repeat that activity, although I wouldn't suggest repeating it once after another, but repeat it to identify different points of information. The importance of change and the confidence you have about change. And to elicit change talk. So to strengthen the client's motivation, it is helpful to create opportunities to share change talk or statements that express positive ideas about change. It can be as detailed as the desire to change or as subtle as complaining about a current situation. This is going to conclude our presentation for week 4. Have a wonderful week. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me.